And we are on the air, and you are listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. Let's talk. And I am Halli Casser-Jayne. Welcome to my listeners in the United States and around the world. Tune in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show at hallicasserjayne.com. This week on the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, Ken Follett books. Is there anything like them or anyone quite like Ken Follett? Today on the show, the delightful, insightful author, Mr. Follett. And that's not all. In my second half hour, joining me at my table is British Royal, Princess Diana's bridesmaid, goddaughter of Prince Charles, and the founder and creative force behind the eponymous lifestyle brand India Hicks Inc., Ms. India Hicks. What a show. Let's get to it. One of the world's best-loved authors, selling more than 160 million copies of his 30 books, Ken Follett's first bestseller was Eye of the Needle, a spy story set in the Second World War. Many of his books have reached number 1 on the New York Times bestseller list, including Edge of Eternity, Fall of Giants, A Dangerous Fortune, The Key to Rebecca, Lie Down with Lions, Triple, Winter of the World, and World Without End. Now Ken Follett is out with a gripping new story, A Column of Fire, a little history. In 1989, Ken Follett published the historical epic The Pillars of the Earth, a departure for the best-selling writer, which stunned readers and critics alike with its ambitious scope and unforgettable cast of characters. It reached number 1 on bestseller lists around the world. Oprah selected The Pillars of the Earth for her book club. Then came the second book in the Kingsbridge Series, World Without End. Together, the 2 books in the series have sold 38 million copies. Now, the saga continues, with Follett's new epic, A Column of Fire. Set during one of the most turbulent and revolutionary times in history, A Column of Fire begins in 1558, where the ancient stones of Kingsbridge Cathedral look down on a city torn apart by religious conflict. As power in England shifts precariously between Catholics and Protestants, high principles clash bloodily with friendship, loyalty, and love. Column of Fire charts the star-crossed romance between Ned Willard and Marjorie Fitzgerald over half a century. Meanwhile, Europe turns against England when Elizabeth Tudor becomes queen and finds herself beset by plots to dethrone her that will lead to the beginning of the British Secret Service that eventually gave us James Bond. But the real enemies, then as now, are not the rival religions. The true battle pitches those who believe in tolerance and compromise against the tyrants who would impose their ideas on everyone else, no matter what the cost. Let's talk. Hi, Ken. How are you today?
Pretty good, Halli. How are you?
I'm great. Are you having a good time?
I'm having a pretty good time. I'm in New York City and doing interviews and talking about my book.
And that's a good thing.
All in all, I'm in good shape.
Well, good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about A Column of Fire. But I have to ask you a question before we get into the book. Talk to me about this, about your staggering success. Do you feel worthy of it? Do you find it all a bit odd? Or do you say to yourself, I earned it? You have an enormous success. How does that feel?
Well, it feels pretty good, and I've had some luck, but I try very hard. I go to great lengths to write a story that will draw people in and intrigue them and make them want to turn the pages. I have friends who are writers who say, well, I write to please myself, and then if other people like it, that's great news. And I have never talked that way about my work. I've always tried to write something that people would really enjoy, would give people a really memorable reading experience. And so while I've got to admit that now and again I've had some luck, Oprah Winfrey picking The Pillars of the Earth as her choice, that was pretty lucky. I was very pleased about that. But I've also got to be honest with you and say, actually, I'm successful because I work so darn hard at it.
I like the way that sounds. And I'm glad you're honest enough to admit it. A lot of people don't want to do that. But then let's go here with that just for a second. Just play this out with me because it does, I don't know, it's something that I always think about. And that is, you get to a point after writing for as long as you have and
I don't say that it becomes a formula, because God knows you're one of the few writers who's broken your own formula. You went from one thing to something completely different, and you did it successfully. But do you know what your reader wants from you, and do you think about that while you are creating?
All the time. I think all the time. As I'm writing, will people like this? Will they believe that this could really have happened? Will they be interested in how this turns out? Will they want this character to succeed? Will they hate this bad character so much that they can't wait for me to kill him in the story? I think all the time about how readers are experiencing this. It's absolutely the most important. The key for me is that the readers must share the emotions of the characters in the story. And if they do that, if you care, if you're reading my book and you're worried about this character, is she going to be okay? Or you hate this character and why don't they arrest that guy, you're saying? Or if you're on the edge of the seat, or if tears come to your eyes reading my story, you know this isn't a true story, don't you? You know Follett made it up. Tears come to your eyes. If you have, readers have that reaction to the story, that's what I want. And if they do, then they will remember the story, they'll love it, and they'll say to the friends, I just read this great book, you've got to read it.
So now that's interesting to me, because I really did some background on you. And you fascinate me. So I'm going down the psychological road with you. I hope you don't mind.
This is very flattering.
Well, it happens to be utterly true too. But here's I read something that you wrote. You're talking about playing the guitar, and you said one is something. I ask you that for reasons. Is writing the thing that you do best? And the reason why I did it was because it came out of what you wrote on your website about playing the guitar. You said, I've always played the guitar quite badly. And I think it's quite important to have something that you do badly, especially if you are an overachiever type of personality like myself. And that interested me about you. You also talk about the fact that you think you're a thoughtful writer, not so much an emotional writer. Playing guitar is certainly an emotional thing. Now you're saying to me you want to elicit from your readers emotion, but I guess that takes having the mind create that for your reader. Yes?
Yes, indeed. So of course, the story, writing the story, creating the story is cerebral. It's got to be logical. One thing's got to happen because another thing happens. And the decisions people make can't be crazy decisions. They've got to be decisions that, even if a decision ultimately gets the character into trouble, it's got to seem like a rational decision in the first place. But then, of course, on top of all that rational stuff, what really gets you is how this character is feeling. The character's fear or hope or love or hatred or ambition, all of these things. And also, my principal characters are never like James Bond. James Bond has no parents, no children, no brothers and sisters, no cousins, right? He has no family. My characters always come from a family, because what also happens, not only is the character worried or frightened, but his mother is worried about him, or his kids are worried about him, or his brother is worried about him. And it's that network of people, for me, that helps to create the emotion surrounding the plot.
Time, space, character, you get it all in there. It's pretty interesting. It is what makes your book so readable. Column of Fire, perfect title for your book. I got to ask you a question. By the way, great woman characters. Again, what's with you and women? You do them better than any. I mean, it's adorable. I mean, how do you get there? How do you know women so well? That's what I want to know. But here's also where I wanted to go with that. It's you and spies. Come on, Ken. What's with you and spies? What's this fascination? Where'd this all come from for you?
Well, there's something. Spies are always being deceitful, so they're always in danger of being found out, and so that creates suspense all the time. But the other thing about spies is when something happens in history or in politics, in world affairs, something happens, there's an official story about it, which isn't true. And we're always interested in what's the real story, what really happened. We love that sort of thing, don't we? That's what we want to know, what really happened. What was really said, in the Kremlin or in the White House or in Peking, Beijing. What's so, and spies, of course, know the real story because that's where they are. They're in the secret world. They know all the secrets. And, that's where they live. And so when we look at some great historical event through the eyes of spies, we see the backstory. We see the hidden story behind it all. And we also are with this person who is constantly in danger because there's always a fear that people are going to find out what he really is.
It's very cute because extraordinarily self-aware and self-control. You'd have to be a spy, right? You must.
Yes.
Right? So if you're not a writer or a guitar player for a great band, would you have been a spy?
Well, I maybe I wouldn't have been too bad at it, but here's the problem for me. Spy organizations are generally pretty conservative, and I've always been pretty liberal, as you can probably tell from my books.
Of course.
And I'm not sure that I have a suspicion that MI5 and MI6 would have looked at my record and the demonstrations I went on when I was a university student and would have said, we're not having this guy. He's some kind of lefty.
Listen to you. And a 60s kid, by the way, too. And that's something that's not playing into your writing a lot because you are, what did you call it? Somebody called you or you called yourself a champagne socialist. Oh my God, I love it.
Yes,
that was the best line I think I've read in years. But it's true. But here's the deal. You at this point, you are writing about characters, and particularly Column of Fire, Welsh coal miners, Russian factory workers, Jews, African Americans, religious freedom, which is certainly the subject of this book. Why now? Yes. And I'm interested in people in history who have fought for freedom. That's the thing that really gets me going. And it's because if we think about it, freedom's kind of unusual. Most people in history have lived under a tyranny. Many people in the world today live under a tyranny. And I'm intrigued by the question, how did we get so lucky? How did this happen? And so looking at the past and identifying moments when people fought for freedom. For example, when the women fought for the vote, nobody wanted to give it. All the men were in power. They didn't want to give them it. Somehow the women won that political battle. Or in my last book, Edge of Eternity, part of that was the story of how African Americans fought for civil rights in the 1960s. And when people fight a battle like that and win, for me, that is a great story. I interviewed Congressman John Lewis, who in the 60s was a student leader, leading protests, got his skull cracked by a policeman's baton in Mississippi back in the 1960s. I said to him, you ran a brilliant campaign. How did you get so smart? You were 20 years old. Of course, he said, I wasn't smart, but we had the right philosophy, was what he said. But I think they were incredible. And that turns me on, that story of how downtrodden people just stood up for what they were entitled to and won the political battle. That's the kind of thing that turns me on. So in recent years, I've written a lot of stories about people fighting for their freedom. And in the 16th century, what they're fighting for is religious freedom, the freedom to worship as they want to, as they believe is right, not as the king tells them. Yeah,
and that's the kind of thing that gets me going.
Yeah, 1558, 2017. I don't know. Are things all that different? You've been to America lately?
I know what you're saying.
Right?
I know what you're saying. We still have religious conflict. We still have religious violence. But I believe we're making, at least in principle, we believe, don't we? That in Western Europe and North America, governments believe that religious freedom is a basic fundamental right. And back in 1558, almost nobody believed that. People who believed that were considered wild radicals.
Yeah, well, interesting. You think that there come a time when you say, enough, I'm done. I think I'll become a carnival barker or who knows what. writing, I'm finished?
There's no sign of it. I'm still enjoying it as much as I always did. I still find it challenging and fascinating. And, you know, I tell myself that after finishing a book, I should take 2 weeks off. But after about 10 days, I start thinking, oh, you know, I know what might be a good story to do next. And I'm back into it. It's too interesting to take a long holiday from it.
And is part of the fascination that it's not something you easily master? It's kind of like your guitar. You keep working at it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. If it was easy, if writing novels was easy, then I think it would, you know, it'd be possible to get bored with it. No, it's difficult. It's difficult. It's very complex. You have to keep it all in your head, and you have to focus on not just getting it right, getting the history right, making it a logical plot, but you also have to focus on what is the reader going to feel about this? Will the reader care about this? Will the reader want a certain outcome from this scene? And that it's a relentless focus. If you want to do it well, if you want to do popular fiction well, you've got to have a relentless focus on the reader's progress from page to page and what the reader is feeling about everything. And so all of this is, you know, it's not easy, and thank goodness, because if it was easy, I'd probably be bored.
Yeah, I hear you about that. I surely do. So if you hadn't become a successful author or a famous guitar player or Ken, a spy, what might have you become?
What would be my number 4 choice? You know, when I finished, when I graduated from college, one of the jobs I was offered was with a company called International Computers Limited, and this is at a time when computers were a very new thing. And if I'd taken that job and if I'd been good at it, you know what? I might be Bill Gates.
There you go. You know, it's interesting to me. I mean, I don't know. I'm glad that you're not Bill Gates, though. I like you better in the role that you're playing now, and so I can pick up your books every once in a while and have a really good, fun time with them and learn, by the way, which is one of the reasons I like your books so much. So maybe Bill Gates, okay. Ever too late to create new dreams or listen to me? Is that why you write books? Because you're always creating new dreams?
Yeah, but that is exactly what it's about. Yes, it's imagining new dreams. Yes, it's also about putting them into a form where people can share them. But yes, you have to have the dreams first. So what's next? Well, I finished A Column of Fire at Christmas, and so since then I've been working on a new story. I hesitate to say much about it because I'm still at the stage where I could change my mind about it and do something else. It did happen to me once that I worked on a story for a year and then realized that it wasn't going to work out. So if you don't mind, I won't say too much about my next book until I'm absolutely sure that that's the one I'm going to write. Well, then I have to ask you this question, though. Do you want to go back more to the roots, or are you enjoying staying this historical kind of atmosphere you've recreated now? Well, I enjoy this very much. And I think I will do another historical novel next. But it is important if you have if you're a creative person over a long period of time, you've got to be careful not to start repeating yourself. You've got to keep an eye on that. So maybe one of these days I'll do what I did when I wrote The Pillars of the Earth and write something that nobody is expecting. I'm not saying definitely, but the idea kind of tempts me. Well, here you go, buddy. You know, spying takes a lot of courage. Breaking out of the mold of the way the publishing companies want to put you, that takes a lot of nerve, too. You'd be a great spy. Yep. Nice to talk to you. It was such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck with this one. It's terrific. Bye-bye. Thanks. Bye-bye. I've been speaking with best-selling author Ken Follett. His latest book is A Column of Fire. For information on the book and Ken Follett, visit his website at ken-follett.com. You were listening to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show. My guests today are New York Times bestselling author Ken Follett and British royal and the CEO of India Hicks Inc., India Hicks. Tune in to the Halli Casser-Jayne podcast. Nearly 300 episodes available at hallicasserjayne.com. We'll be back in a minute. Stay with us. Hi, this is Halli Casser-Jayne.
Are you enjoying the show? I hope so. And I hope that you'll tell your friends about it and help us grow our family. How can you help? That's easy. Share the link to the show with your friends or my show's player. And I would love it even more if you'd recommend they visit my website at HalliCasser-Jayne.com. I look forward to seeing all of you there. As of 2011, India Hicks was 678th in line for the British throne. The daughter of famed interior designer David Hicks and Lady Pamela Hicks, India's grandfather was Lord Mountbatten, the last viceroy to India, the uncle of Prince Philip, and second cousin once removed of Elizabeth II. What a pedigree. And yet, India's pedigree is only a small part of her historical significance. Add to her resume that she was a bridesmaid at the wedding of her godfather, Prince Charles, to Lady Diana, and for most, that would be enough of a legacy. Not so India Hicks. In the map of India Hicks' relatively young life, her birthright and her relations are a small part of her story. Call her an overachiever, perhaps a perfectionist. Certainly she inherited her mother's style and her father's artistic talents. She was never going to be one to rest on her or her family's laurels. And so, in the span of her life, India Hicks has built her own brand as the founder and creative force behind the eponymous lifestyle brand, India Hicks Inc., always working to empower and enable women to become entrepreneurs and run their own successful businesses. Mother of 5 children, 1 adopted, a caretaker of many animals, marathon runner, and a life partner to David Flint Wood, whom she never married. This month, India has been awarded the Good Housekeeping Award by the editors of Good Housekeeping magazine and guest editor Melinda Gates for her role in promoting female entrepreneurship. She's the author of 3 books, Island Life, Island Beauty, and most recently, Island Style, a New York Times bestseller. Let's talk.
Hello.
How are you? Are you having fun today?
I am. Thank you so much.
Well, it's nice to have you here. Let's get going. You are one fascinating lady. I've spent the last few days looking in every nook and cranny of your life. Oh my God, girl. Here we go. Talk to me about this. I mean,
thank you.
Well, it's an amazing life that you've led. It's very nearly perfect. And I have to ask you first, tell us the truth. What's the very last thing you'd want someone to really know about India Hicks? Talk to me.
Gosh, the last thing I'd want you to know about me, I don't know. I'm pretty open. I think if you have a look at my Instagram account, which is India Hicks Style, you'll see that I share an awful lot, good and bad. We have an awful lot of fun at the same time. My eating habits are probably pretty shocking. There's an awful lot of sugar that goes in. In fact, if you look on the Instagram account right now, you'll see the desk that I'm talking to you from and the gigantic box of chocolates that's sitting in front of me. People, that might not be the best example. I try to ameliorate it with having a lot of green juice. I don't think if I'm really doing that any favors to my body.
Listen, darling, and you're so damn. I was going to say you're so damn thin. I mean, it's unbelievable. You actually eat all that sugar. I know you're running a lot, so that saves your butt, right? There you go. Listen, let's move. I want to really. That's it. I want to really talk about India Hicks. I want to talk about first, though, your lineage. I mean, you're standing as a British royal. Your illustrious grandfather, Lord Mountbatten. Your amazingly talented designer dad, David Hicks. It all sounds just absolutely wonderful, darling. But I'm sure you won't complain about how lucky your life has been. On the other hand, is it easy being the goddaughter of Prince Charles, having all of that illustrious stuff around you? How hard is that for you to trust people?
That's a very, very interesting question. I think I'm very, very blessed with what I grew up with, and I can certainly recognize I was born under a very lucky star. It was extraordinary to have Prince Charles as a godfather and my grandfather to be very much a part of the royal family. I don't consider myself part of the royal family. My life is very, very different now. It's interesting that I left England very early on. I don't think it was a conscious decision, but probably a subconscious decision. It's quite hard to come out from the shadow of those great characters who had touched so much of my early childhood life, my very dynamic grandparents, my own parents. You know, my mother was extraordinary and still is. She was, she had a front row seat so many historical events. She was there when India was handed back its power. She sat in prayer. She was with Mahatma Gandhi. She was with the Queen the moment the Queen became Queen. I think that was quite hard to find my own voice, A, in the design world, but B, as a person. I was always labeled Prince Charles' goddaughter or the daughter of David Hicks or the granddaughter of the Earl Mountbatten of Burma. and not, oh my gosh, I'm no way complaining about that, and it was fantastic. But I did want to be recognized and defined as my own personality. And I think now, having lived 20 years on a small island in the Bahamas, having raised 5 children, one of whom is a foster Bahamian child who has brought me so much love, that I think now I do have my own sense of self and place. And I think a lot of the business, the business I founded and the messages that we're saying in that business is about women finding themselves and feeling relevant and doing something that is for them. Because I think as women, we spend an awful lot of time being very good parents or mothers or partners or sisters. And sometimes we lose ourselves along the way. And it's so important that we take that back at some point. And the business I founded, I love that women are joining us and really finding themselves. They can earn a quite an impressive income with us, or they can just have the fun of connecting with a local community and indeed giving back. We have a very strong giving back program with our business as well.
We're going to talk about India Hicks in a minute because I think it's phenomenal what you've done with that. And I love the model that you've set up. I love it. But let's go back a little bit because I think you really are a role model. And I want to expose you as that because you were a bit of a hellion in your youth. You got thrown out of boarding school for entertaining boys. You're my kind of girl. Rebellious, your middle name when you're, I mean, right? Rebellious, is that you?
It's so odd. No, I mean, it's so odd. I don't know quite how that happened. There was a moment, and it was perfectly innocent, actually, and it makes me laugh every time everybody imagines the fiendish things we were getting up to, but I wasn't really. I think I beat to the sound of my own drum, if that's the right expression, and I just did things a little differently. It wasn't intentional rebellion.
Okay, that's fair. But you went in search of something, obviously. I know that you went in search of designer Amelia Pucci. You became a model for Ralph Lauren and J. Crew and other brands. Well, so did you know what you were looking for, or it was a blind search for something to find something of yourself? Which, by the way, I think is typical of a lot of young girls or younger girls.
Again, very interesting question. I think you're right. I think it was sort of blindly just, one step led to another. And it all now, looking back, felt like a big grand adventure. I don't think any of it was planned or plotted. I fell into the modeling. I fell into meeting Amelia Pucci. I fell into, the adventure of life. I've always had the courage to do things differently. And I think a lot of women get stuck at some point in their lives, and it is good to take a leap sometimes, even if it is a little blindly into the unknown.
Interesting. Being born a girl. This is a question I'd have never asked anybody. I think it's a fair question to ask. Tougher role to be born a girl? You've raised boys or harder to be raised a boy? What do you think? And how do you think that compelled you, knowing that you were a woman? You were going to grow to be a woman.
I think a number of things. I think in England, certainly we still have primogeniture, which means that the firstborn boy, regardless if he's the youngest of 6 sisters, he inherits everything. So that there is always that slightly lesser being because you're a girl. The boy is always more important. So there's that. And I think in the world of business today, certainly the experience that I've had is you still have to fight just that much harder because you're a woman, because you have to have the man take you seriously. And I think that it's very, very difficult. The way you dress, the way you speak, the way you act is all looked at by men in the world of business in a very different way. Women look at women very differently, but men looking at women in the world of business, that's tough still. It's very tough, and I don't think we've got it quite right yet.
Couldn't agree with you more. I wonder, though, if you found one key that you would say to women, do this, try this, this might work for you. Is there one, or is it a multitude?
It's probably a multitude, but I think it comes down to confidence as well. Just be confident. Believe in yourself. If you're doing it right, if you're really passionate about something and engaged in something and understanding something and you've done your homework and educated yourself on it, then have a voice in it. Believe in it. Stand up for it. Just be confident.
I love the word confident, don't you? Absolutely love that word. Big letters. It should be on everybody's mirror, the first thing they see in the morning, right? Have confidence. It's such a hard thing for girls to get to, even in these times. So the question that I know that you're going to hate me asking, but darling, I got to ask. It's, you know who. It's about Princess Diana. You're 13 years old. You're a bridesmaid for Diana and your godfather, Prince Charles. And And where does the time go? That's the first thing. Can you believe that? 20 years? Unbelievable. Your memories of all of that, Diana, Charles, taking part in a royal wedding. And let me ask you this, though. And how do you see all of that looking back? And maybe how that affected you?
Ooh, lots of questions wrapped up there. I think I've again, so blessed, so lucky to have been part of that wedding. I mean, what a moment in history. You know, crowds of people in joy instead of protesting and being angry. It was a fairy tale wedding. I rode in a golden horse-drawn carriage. I mean, my goodness, it's the dreams of little children, especially little girls. But it was a very hard shadow to come out from. I was forever labeled Princess Diana's bridesmaid, Prince Charles's goddaughter, the granddaughter of the Almabat of Burma. All of that was quite hard to find my own voice. So I think that actually that's probably why I left England quite early on, why I traveled around the world, why I've ended up on a small island of the Bahamas, why I've raised 5 kids there and not in England, was to so that I could become my own person. I could have my own voice. But that is not to say I am in any way ungrateful for that extraordinary beginning.
I've had moments in my life when something so shattering has occurred that I could actually feel my body go into, I'm sure you've had them. Learning about Diana's death, was that a moment like that for you, having been so into that and then she's gone? What was that moment when you found out she was dead like for you?
I am sure, like many, many, many of your listeners today, you remember where you were, you remember what you were doing. It was total shock. It was an unfathomable tragedy. But I do, again, believe that we shouldn't look back. We should look forward. We should celebrate what Diana left. We should not mourn her loss. It is extraordinary the job that the Prince of Wales has done as a single dad. Those 2 boys are fantastic. They're working very hard. They have very positive messages. They are role models. Their dad works unbelievably hard for the good of England and beyond. And probably a lot of the time does not get recognized or acknowledged for that. He's an exceptional person. I'm very blessed that he's my godfather. I think Diana was amazing. She was the people's princess. She had the star quality. She had beauty and elegance and style, and she took everything that she had and she made it into something for the better of other people. And there is a lesson there. There really is. And because I have been lucky and blessed enough to have been touched in my life at certain points by them, I hope that some of the influence has rubbed off on me and that I am able to take tiny, tiny part of the lessons that she taught and applied it to my own company and my own life.
You're being humble. First of all, I got to ask you, I've been dying to ask you this for days. India, why'd they name you India? Was it your grandfather in India or just they liked the name India?
Absolutely. It was because of my grandfather. He was the last viceroy of India, and of course many people nowadays don't know what that means, and it means really the Queen's representative. He was sent out there in her place, and he was a very powerful man in a very powerful position because he was asked to hand back India to India, away from the British, to give them their independence. It was freedom at midnight on the 27th of August in 1947. It was a very, very momentous occasion. He was the last viceroy, and I was the last grandchild, and I think that they thought that there was a very strong connection.
Yeah, great name. You have 5 kids, 1 adopted, all sorts of 4-leggeds, and maybe a partridge in a pear tree. I don't know. I haven't been on your island to see. But that says to me family's very important to you. Is it, and why?
Oh, hugely. First and foremost, above everything. Because it's what makes me feel complete. Motherhood changed me dramatically, as I'm sure it has for every mother out there. Every mother listening knows the terrifying questions we ask ourselves: Are we getting it right? Are we getting it wrong? What is the balance like? The work life. It's an impossible task, but it's also the most fulfilling thing. You put yourself second. You know, there's a time when one can become rather egotistical or selfish, and becoming a mother, I think most women stop and the children become first. Life feels just so much better. There is utter chaos in my life. My kids are a bloody nightmare, as you can imagine. I have 4 teenage boys living in my house. I want to shoot them half the time. But would I have it any other way? No, I wouldn't. But it's getting the balance right. How hard is getting the balance right? Impossible. I don't have any of the answers. The only thing that consoles me is the fact that I think there are many, many other women out there who are also worrying that they're not getting it right. And that's all we can do. We can only do our very best and not think, are we getting it right or are we getting it wrong? Just try and do our best.
Balance. Isn't that a wonderful word? Ay. It's the hardest thing in the world to achieve.
Yeah.
And particularly for women, and particularly a woman like you who is just juggling so many different things in your life. Listen, you have this phenomenal home in the Bahamas. That home, your nest, really is the logo for your brand. Tell me about the house and the furnishings. And what is the India Hicks brand? The look, the lifestyle, teenage boys. How do you keep that house looking so wonderful? Talk to me.
Well, it's a very lived-in home for certain. There are certain areas that we encourage the kids to live in, and there are other rooms that we encourage the kids not to live in. But at the end of the day, it's a home. There is dogs, there is sand, there is mayhem, and I think that's probably the look that suits us. I'm a Virgo. I'm very perfection-oriented driven, so I like to have plumped cushions. I like to have everything neat and orderly if I possibly can. It's probably pretty healthy that I have those teenagers rampaging through the house and just making disorder, so it balances out. We like the look of the British colonial feel. I like it to feel like it's befitting to the environment. I don't want to have anything that's sort of stark or trend-setting or a big statement in any way. Hopefully it just has the feeling of a lived-in home.
Comfort. A good word, important word for you?
Comfort, yes, increasingly so. I turned 50 yesterday. Good God, 50. How did that happen? But in your 20s and 30s, you take so much time over yourself, and you wear clothes that are painful and heels that are far too high. And now you just think, oh my God, comfort. I'm perfectly happy to travel in a pair of Birkenstocks and leggings, but I still want to take care of myself. I still want to make sure I'm fit and healthy. I still want to make sure that I'm looking the best I possibly can be. So yes, I'll have Birkenstocks and leggings, but I also, when I'm going out, when I do meet with people, and when I'm at an event, I do like to put my best foot forward if I can.
But doesn't that also come from the artist in you? I know that I'm like you. I like to look great and I like to dress great, but to me, it's also a sense of design, a sense of, I know it works, how to put the right scarf with the right this, that, or the other thing. You had to have gotten some of that from both your parents. Your mother is as elegant as they come, and your father is certainly one of the great, brilliant interior designers, David Hicks. Is that it? Is that a lot of it? You're an artist.
Well, yes, I certainly, I like to have pretty things around me, and I like to live in an attractive environment as much as I possibly can. I think the wonderful thing nowadays, it doesn't take an awful lot of money to make your home look attractive, or to wear something that feels good, that's going to make you feel like $1 million. My father always said good taste in design is by no means dependent upon money.
Smart man. Belts, hats, jewelry, purses, scarves, fragrances, clothing, skincare. How hands-on are you in all of this?
Utterly. Every word of copy, every image, every message that we send out is powerful for me. Every handbag, every smell, every piece of hardware, I have overseen, have my fingerprints on. It's very, very important. We're a young company. It needs to have my DNA on it still.
So I don't know how this works with, you have some partners in this, or you're working with people who are assisting?
I most certainly do.
Yeah.
This is definitely not me on my own. There is a big team of people who help, not only at home, but at work, and also the incredible, extraordinary ambassadors who join us. Without this team, it's not me on my own.
Right. So talk to me about that, because I think that's something that women have to learn, and that's to navigate the people around them. That's a skill that men, they don't have to quite navigate it like we do. Can you talk about that for a minute?
No, I don't think they do. I think especially in the world of business, it is hard for women, as we said. It's tricky out there. And I think, women, they are really in the heart of the home. They're the heartbeat and the backbone.
I want to talk to you about what you said on your mission statement, because I love this mission statement. I'm going to quote it. We share our brand with remarkable women as a foundation for them to become entrepreneurs in their own time and on their own terms. These women are our ambassadors, and together we are building something extraordinary. Now, your company model is very different than a lot of companies these days. You kind of harken back to the old days of Avon and maybe Mary Kay. Talk to me about that. Are you there? Yeah.
I think, yes, I am. You were asking about the mission statement. Which one did you actually read?
I read the one that was we share our brand with remarkable women as a foundation for them to become entrepreneurs to their own time and their own terms.
Yes.
And the ambassadors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I lost you for a moment there. Yes, absolutely. We partner with entrepreneurial women, and we always say we are building something extraordinary together. And that's very strong. We always want women to understand that there's support here. We're in a community of women. We're empowering each other. We're learning from each other. We're training together. We see this as an uncommon opportunity that we could take to any level.
So, lady, listen to this. Good Housekeeping Award. This must just thrill you. The editors of Good Housekeeping, guest editor Melinda Gates, went through thousands of candidates, and they narrowed it down to 15 winners. You were it. They picked India Hicks. This is what they said. India Hicks was selected for her entrepreneurship and her outstanding company that not only provides jobs, but also gives back. She's a game changer, an influencer, and inspiration. How do you respond?
Well, deeply flattered, rather unbelieving. It's so nice to be recognized. I spent, 2 years on the road building this company, away from my family, away from my kids, missing out on a great deal of home life in order for other women not to have to do that, quite frankly. But I had the most amazing experience. You have an incredible country. I saw wonderful, wonderful parts of America. But that award goes to not just me. That award goes to the team, the corporate team in Los Angeles, who work as tirelessly as I do to build this company, and of course to the extraordinary women who have believed in us and joined us. So this is not an award that I take lightly or that I hold in my own hands. It is an award that I share.
So it puts you at the top of the heap. Any fear of failing?
Oh, of course. There's always fear of failure. But again, as an entrepreneur, you do meet failure. And you pick yourself up and you brush yourself off and you look at it in a different way and you pivot and turn and you just keep going and get on. Yes, there are always going to be failures, but you cannot be fearful of them.
So you brought up the word fear. Talk to me about that, because I think that's what a lot of women are up against, their own fear.
I think that's right, and I think it probably comes back to the word confidence, and that women should be more confident and less fearful. And I think especially as we age, we should really take that on board, because we now have so much of life's experiences to draw from, and to recognize the mistakes and to turn them into something better.
So tell me this: what's the hardest thing you've ever had to endure in your life, and how'd you overcome it?
There's quite a lot. I mean, it's very personal. My grandfather was murdered by the IRA. I was there. My sister has suffered from manic depression all of her life. I've been in many, many mental institutes. I had a very difficult, tricky father. We could go on quite a lot. Many, many people have very difficult lives and huge hurdles that they have to overcome. And again, I think that is the wonderful thing about getting older, is it makes you stronger. And you can tackle more.
It's interesting, India, and I appreciate your candor, because I think it's so important. We all seem to think that people, who come from your world don't have to deal with the day-to-day crap the rest of us might have to deal with. And the fact is, nobody gets out of here alive, as Jim Morrison once said. Isn't that the truth, right? Can't even imagine. So here you go. Great opportunities. Not everyone does. The world's gone mad. Your grandfather, as you said, killed by Irish rebels when you were a teenager. Diana killed in that horrible crash. And yet you've been blessed with what seems a wonderful family, great artistic and entrepreneurial talent. At the end of the day, in the scheme of it all, what really matters? Is it who has the most on her resume wins? Is that a model? I think a lot of women would have been led to think so. I don't think that's going to be your answer to me. Talk to me.
Not at all, of course not. At the end of the day, all that matters is happiness. If you are happy and content and life is balanced, I think that you have succeeded.
Okay. The one question you wished I had asked you and I didn't. Tell me.
I think you've asked nearly everything. I very much hope that your listeners will go to indiahicks.com and explore the website. Feel that they want to be part of what we've been talking about, which is an opportunity to get involved with social selling from the heart of the home and be part of a community that really cares, to be part of a long-term strategy about building a brand, having a career through this model, and, having fun with it. As I said, go to India Hicks Style on Instagram and see the fun that we have.
India Hicks, you're a wonderful woman. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Very much appreciate it.
Okay.
I've been speaking with India Hicks, the founder and creative force behind the eponymous lifestyle brand that empowers and enables women to become entrepreneurs and run their own successful small businesses, India Hicks Inc. For more information on India and to read her fun blog, visit indiahicks.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Halli Casser-Jayne Show, a production of Resec LLC. The Halli Casser-Jayne Show posts new podcasts Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern. Visit hallicasserjayne.com.